Hello and welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. For today's show, we will be starting with this morning's conversation between Al and Senator Tina Smith regarding today being MLK Jr. Day. And then after that, we will play a encore of last week's Friday's Healing Circle. All right, enjoy.
I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to a special edition of Conversations with
Al,
Al.
can you hear me?
I do, and we're live. I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane, a special conversation, a brief one this morning with Senator Tina Smith. Senator Smith, first of all, today we in the world commemorate the life, the work of Dr. Martin Luther King. And I know that you are one of the leaders of the effort to pass voting rights legislation. Talk about that if you would. Good morning and welcome.
Well, good morning, Alan. It always feels good to be with you on this day in particular as we celebrate Dr. King's birthday and his work. I have to tell you that I come to you today with just so much humility. It has been a discouraging week, to be honest, as we have worked so hard to pass the Freedom to Vote Act to protect people's voting rights in this country, to end partisan gerrymandering, to stop Republican legislatures around the country from passing laws that make it harder for Black people and poor people to vote. And so it's frustrating. It's frustrating today. But I also know that the arc of the moral universe bends towards justice, as Dr. King says. It just doesn't always bend on the timetable that we have such urgency around here on this beautiful earth. And that is the challenge that we have right now. So I'll be going back to Washington tomorrow. I will be with my Democratic colleagues holding the floor of the United States Senate on Wednesday to push a vote on these important pieces of legislation and to push a vote to change the Senate rules so that a minority can't block us from making the progress that we must make to protect people's most precious of freedoms.
What are the options? What scenarios do you see playing out 1, 2, and 3?
Well, as I think a lot of people know, the Senate has these old rules which require 60 people to vote yes in order for a piece of legislation to go forward. This is really unheard of. No other legislative body that I am aware of has that supermajority rule. And that, of course, then allows a minority of people to block votes. That is essentially the tool that was used by white supremacists in our country to block voting rights legislation, to block the full promise of our country. And yet it still is in place in the United States Senate today. So what can we do about this? There's a variety of ways that we can change the Senate rules. It's up to a majority of the senators to make that decision. We could carve out voting rights as one place where a simple majority rules, as it should always rule in a democracy. We could require those that oppose voting rights legislation to hold the floor of the Senate and to talk until they're worn out, which is what a filibuster was originally intended to be. Unfortunately, no Republican supports those rule changes, and 2 Democrats also don't support those rule changes. And so that is the reason why we are in the position that we're in today.
The carve out is not an unusually used tool. It's used all the time.
Right.
And so
That's exactly right.
And so what do you expect to happen this week?
Well, as you say, Al, the carve out, we don't require, the filibuster can't be used to block Supreme Court nominees. It can't be used to block judicial appointments or executive appointments like cabinet secretaries. We have a way of circumventing the filibuster to pass important piece of budget legislation, which is what we did with the American Rescue Plan. So why not voting rights, I think, is a question that we have to ask ourselves. I strongly think that we should allow the voting rights legislation to go through with a simple majority. Unfortunately, though, and this is my source of great frustration, as I said, no Republicans and 2 Democrats refuse to make those rule changes. And so what will happen this week is we will play this out in real time on the Senate floor. I have to tell everybody I'm not optimistic that we will find a path forward, but we won't stop trying. I think that is that's my responsibility as United States Senator to everybody in this country, and certainly to Minnesota.
Senator Smith, thank you. I know you've got other interviews waiting, but thank you for taking the time to talk to us here at Insight News and at Black Press USA.
Thank you so much, Al.
Good luck. Good luck. What can citizens do to support you to voice our concerns? Finally.
Well, I would say I'm reminded today that the birthday of Dr. King is not a day. It's not a day of celebration. It should be a day of action. And of course, not just today, but every day. Now, we are so blessed in Minnesota that our voting laws in Minnesota are very strong. They protect people's franchise and people's rights to vote. And so that is a blessing for us. I just want that blessing to be broadly shared across the country, and that is not the case. So what people can do is to not give up hope, continue to fight, and continue to take care of all of our families, and not to become discouraged, even at a time like this, where we are in a moment of real conflict.
Senator Smith, thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.
I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. It's Friday, and Friday we do the Healing Circle. You know, the goal is to talk about mental health and healing, and to do that from a perspective that reflects our history, our legacy, our culture, that is organic, that reflects a way of knowing that emanates and originates within us, within our history, within our ancestry. We call on the elders, the ancestors, the elders who are among us. We call on the ancestors, those who have transitioned to a new way of being with us as departed. And we call by our assembly on the future to witness what we say and who we are and what we do. Our work and our intent is to create a future. And we embrace that future in our words and in our collaboration. I have the chance to connect with, and yeah, I want to thank my partners in this endeavor on Friday. My partners are the principals at the African American Child Wellness Institute, led by Dr. Bravada Garrett Akinsanya. We came to this healing circle on Friday through connecting with her and the work that she does, articulating this belief and strategies, the belief that we deserve to be well, that wellness and healing are ours, and that we don't have to apologize, and we must expect it, and therefore live in ways that yield and deliver, that bear the fruit of wellness in our personal and community and collective lives. So I thank Dr. B and the team of therapists at the African American Child Wellness Institute and her company, Braken's Psychological Services and Consulting. And I always take the time to, on this program and others, talk about the importance of mental health in our community. We know that we've come through a lifetime, generations of questioning whether or not we should seek mental health from professional mental health providers. We have this stigma in our community that to admit that I need help, that I need health, that I am depressed or I'm feeling bad, we feel that as a sign of weakness. We take it as a sign of weakness. And then we go on living unhealed, crippled, broken, unrepairable in our own mind, lives unrepairable because we have chosen to not seek and engage the advice, the counsel, the wisdom, the training of people in our community who not only come from within the culture, but have the training, the knowledge, the tools to address what is ailing us in our minds, in our bodies, our spirits. And because we are stigmatized. We have this idea that being concerned about mental health is a weakness. We suffer and we continue to suffer. And so I am so glad, and I wanted to say that I am proud to say that I do therapy every week. My Thursday afternoon after the Thursday broadcast of Conversations with Al McFarlane is a meeting for an hour with my therapist, who's one of the team members at Brakens Consulting. And I tell the therapist as well how much and how pleased I am with myself for having decided that I deserve to be well. I deserve to be healthy. I deserve to feel good and to know why I feel good and to know how I can improve my feelings every day, because good feelings uh, hopefully will lead to improved performance in all areas of my life and relationships with my wife and my children, my neighbors, with my customers in my business, with the community, and with our times. So I have a mission, and the mission is to, first of all, be healthy, to be the best Al McFarlane that I can possibly be, and to be that I am embracing the resources around me. And chief among them is the resource of mental health uh, professional advisors, counselors, in this case, therapists. And I like to share with my audiences that therapy is something that is a tool, an asset, a gift, a resource that we ought to take advantage of. I often think about watching the movies, I guess, and in my mind, I come up with the Woody Allen movies or I don't know who did it, the Soprano movies. And what I remember about the movie is not the plot line, not the story, not the reason for it. What I remember about the movie is these characters always talk about their therapist, and they could be living all kinds of crazy lives and all kinds of functional or dysfunctional lives, but they navigate through that with the help of having therapists. And so I take away from that, maybe I'm short-sighted here, and forgive me for rambling. I'm going to just keep talking until I get tired of it. I take away from that there's a cultural practice in and among some, if not all. I mean, I don't know all white people, but the ones I see on TV, on the screen, on television, there seems to be a cultural practice to engage resources like therapy to stabilize, to balance, and to help people with navigating either personal challenges or trauma or opportunity, the movement towards opportunity and fulfillment in their lives. And so I say to myself, if they can do it, I can do it. If they deserve therapy, feedback, if they deserve direction and training, then I deserve it as well. Then I look at the fact that I have great insurance. I really do. I'm paying for this. And I take one step further and say, if I'm paying for insurance and my insurance includes mental health, shouldn't I be using that? I take another step and say, well, if I'm going to spend this money, where should I spend it? My answer to me is I should spend it where it has the most impact for what I'm looking for, and that's a listening ear, feedback, informed feedback. And where will I find that? I'll find it in my own community. That leads me right back to where I began: the value, the benefit, the beauty, the joy I have in working with my therapist every week, my therapist, part of the team of Brakens Consulting and Psychological Services. So I say all that to say, and actually yesterday when I talked to my therapist, I told her what I'm telling you right now, that I'm proud of myself for taking this step. I recognize that this engagement, this conversation, is not a one-time or a five-time or 1 year. In my mind, this is one of the tools that I'll be engaging for the rest of my life, God willing, and benefiting from. And the beauty, I come back to this, is that I have the resources. Everybody doesn't, but those of us who do ought to exploit those resources so that we get the full benefit of the money that we have, the investment that we are making in our head, and we can direct that to have a double impact by engaging the expertise, the talent, the knowledge, the informed knowledge, and the I don't know the right word for it, but there's a difference. I told my therapist, I don't feel like I gotta explain stuff to you before I start explaining stuff to you. I come to my therapy session every week knowing that you know what I'm talking about. And I open the session without even questioning the fact that I don't have to interpret the context of my story, my feelings, my frustrations, my desires to you. You come from the same place I come from, as I see it. That's what I believe. And therefore, the value you bring in bringing your knowledge, your training, your expertise in service of my desire to be a better human being is phenomenal. So I say all that to say to those who are listening here in Twin Cities, people that engage with us at Insight News and McFarlane Media through our social media platforms, our YouTube channel and our Facebook Live channel, to those of us who connect with us from around the country, around the world through Press USA. We want you to think seriously about making sure you utilize the assets in our community, the training, the knowledge, and the services that mental health and health practitioners in all arenas of health can provide. And to do this in a way that's conscientious, that's intentional, and that acknowledges that what we do also aware of the business impact. We're creating business between us. That's how we grow our community. So with that, soliloquy. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. And I want to introduce my colleague and my inspiration here, and that's Dr. Bravada Garrett Akansanya. Dr. B, how you doing?
I'm great, my brother, and thank you so much for
Hope I'm
just
embarrassing you by praising you so much in your profession. But I just meant every word I said, and I felt like saying it.
thank you. That just touches my heart, because the whole thing that I think is said when you speak as an elder, as a professional, as a leader, as an entrepreneur, as a father, grandfather, husband, Black man, brother, it's coming from a place of just being real
Mhm.
and understanding the multiple ways that we have to care for ourselves, not just our bodies, but our minds and our souls and our spirit, and also our relationships. So one of the things that people don't understand, which I love that you just said, is they don't understand that when you come to counseling, it's not going to be like TV. It's going to be a place where the conversation centers around your goals,
Mhm.
your needs, and your intentions to be well. And those are the raw materials that we as therapists work with when someone comes to see us. How motivated are they? Have they changed before in their lives? Have they seen success in using other people as part of their life journey? And so each week when we've been trying to meet, we've tried to kind of focus on a couple of areas as part of the Nguzo Saba, the 7 principles. And as people who may be joining us for the uh, first time, we generally use a talking stick that we pass from one or another to be able to discuss the topic of the day. So I see my brother Ted joining us, and I want to introduce the topic today is Ujima, collective work and responsibility. And Ujima means to build and maintain our community together and make our brothers and our sisters' problems our problems, and to solve them together. And so I have this I guess I have this philosophy that I've developed over a number of years. And the philosophy is this: don't suffer alone. If you're in pain, tell other people, and especially the person who hurt you. And don't suffer for long. because we find that if we hang on a long time, we may be hurting, and all it was a misunderstanding, and we were carrying all that resentment and pain. So don't suffer for long, and don't suffer a long time, or a long. So I'm going to pass the talking stick to our brother Ted Thompson, who is also a very esteemed elder in our community, who teaches in the line of the grocery store or in a space with 200 people. In all those spaces, he's teaching about what it means to be a mentally well Black person and what it means for us in our community and our families. So, brother, I'm passing you the talking stick. Welcome to
Thank you.
Healing Circle.
Thank you, my sister. I'm glad to be with you today. Hello, brother Al. Good to see you as well. I don't know if I'm doing that much teaching in the grocery line. You know, they sort of look at me strange when I talk about, you know, you also could get healthy because I'm looking at what you're doing in the line, and you certainly could talk to somebody about all of that. So I do believe that we as a community need to really think about and define what is health for us, what is physical health for us, what is mental health for us, and what are the steps that we must take in order to proceed in that direction or maintain the health that we may have achieved. And so I was listening to Dr. Akinsanya, and I certainly agree talking is vitally important. And it's important because most of the time we tend to shut down when the issue is one of shame or humiliation or fear, instead of reaching out, talking with others. We tend to retreat. We tend to shut down. We tend to hold the secret. And there is a lot of research that lets us know that that's the wrong direction to go. So, in a sense, it's sort of counterintuitive. When you are most inclined to shut down, is the most valuable time to reach out. So, I would just add those words for the moment. I'll pass the talking stick to my brother, Mr. McFarlane.
Thank you, Brother Ted. You know, I love that we talk about the Nguzo Saba. And Dr. B, I'd love to have you take a little more time talking about that. And I've got a selfish motive here. I've been invited to do a interview with Maulana, Dr. Maulana Rankaringa, who is the author or the creator of the Kwanzaa celebration in this country based on the Nguzo Saba. And so as I'm asking you to take a little bit more time and talk about the origination of the Nguzo Saba and the principles of Kwanzaa, I'm not only sharing that with our audience, but I'm informing myself, preparing myself for my interview with Dr. Karenga. I think it's going to be the 22nd Saturday in the afternoon, and I'll tell you more about that before the program is over. But I'm ecstatic. I was called and invited to moderate a Zoom conference, and it would just be me and him. And so I'm going to be preparing madly because this is an honor. So talk about Nguzo Saba and the principles of Kwanzaa a little more, if you would, Dr. B. I'm going to pass the talking stick back to you.
Thank you. I take it. And well, I'm pleased to hear that you get to meet with Brother Karanga, and I'm happy that our community understands that our value is really unique. And so the Nguzo Saba is that Nguzo and Saba means 7 principles. And those 7 principles are principles from which we are invited to live by, that give us anchors as people of African descent. And it really it dates back to almost all of the African tribes, whether they're in West Africa, South Africa, East Africa, North, wherever they are, he noticed in his studies that there are some core things that make us strong. One of the values is called umoja, and that core is about unity. And it talks about the fact that we strive for and maintain unity in our families, our communities, our nation, and within our race. And so when we talk about umoja, it's that we're all connected. And all of these values are kind of layered on top of a principle called consubstantiation. And consubstantiation means that all living things are connected, and that we're connected to the earth, to everything on it, and we're connected to each other. The other principle, the second principle is Kujichagulia, and it is called self-determination. And it's to define and name ourselves as well as to create and speak for ourselves. So Kujichagulia is really a very, very important value. And that is, we actually have our truths and our guidelines for healing within us. We carry it in our DNA. We carry it in our lived experience. And from many, many, many generations of history, we know how to be well. We know how to determine for ourselves. We can do it for ourselves. Our barrier has been that colonialism has gotten in front of us, and greed has gotten in front of us because it came with colonialism. And the worst part, I think, is that we swap our values of collectivism and connection to each other for I'm in it for me, I'm in it for my own, I'm not in it with other people. So now I even hear people talking about we're in it together when they're talking about COVID. And I think that's like they just discovered it. That we're in it together. But for Black folks, we've known that for thousands of years, we're in it together. So the second one that talks about that is, of course, the idea of Kujichagulia is to name for ourselves as our own businesses, enterprises, our own institutions. The next one is Ujima, and Ujima means collective work and responsibility. I introduced that one earlier, but it really is talking about sharing your shoulder. He's not heavy, he's my brother. She's not heavy, that's my sister. We're connected. And even if you don't say they're your brother or sister, in our community, we say, that's my cousin. That's my other brother. That's my uncle, my auntie. So we claim each other like that. So that's what that Ujima is about. And then we got Ujima, which really taps into sharing resources among ourselves. And it says to build and maintain our own stores, our own shops, our own businesses, and to profit from them together. So when you have a Black-owned business and you are hiring brothers and sisters to work for you, you're contributing, you're doing Ujima. Like you just demonstrated by saying you go to Brackens because you want to see people who look like you want to put the money back into your community. Those values are Ujima based. And then they have one called Nia, and this is one of my also favorites because it's your calling. Your Nia is your purpose. And it says to make our collective vocation or work the building and developing of our community in order to restore our people to their traditional greatness. So not only does Nia mean purpose, it also means restoration. That our job on this planet, on this earth, is to restore what the Creator himself gave us. And that is life abundantly, creativity. The next one is creativity, kuumba. Kuumba is to do always as much as we can in the way we can in order to leave our community more beautiful and beneficial to others than we inherited. My mother used to say, do what you can, honey, and can the rest. So you got to make sure that you can it for future generations so it is there for them. So kuumba is that creativity that makes a sister put a head wrap on a different way, or makes a brother either sag or pull up his pants and wear a tie a different kind of way, or a shirt. All of these ways of being that have helped us to survive as a people, that people are trying to emulate and buy now. Extra lips, extra butt. We come like that. We're packaged like that already. So good lips. So we have all these issues that people try to put down when we were enslaved. And now people are picking it up and paying plastic surgeons to give it to them. And then the most important, I think, value of them all is Imani. And Imani is the value of faith. And the faith is not just in our Creator, but it's in our institutions, our teachers, our brothers, our sisters, and in our ability to overcome and to be strong as we move forward. So those 7 principles, they hold us up as a people. They come with the beat of our heart. And we may not have labels for them, but we know what it means to be community. So when I think of it, I think of you 2 gentlemen. You're part of my community. You're part of my extended family. And I would go to bat for either one of you any day. And I'll double dog dare anybody to try to do anything to hurt you. I will be there. So that's what community means to me. I'm going to pass the stick to Brother Ted, and you can jump in because you know all of what I'm saying.
Thank you very much. We are family. We are family. I think working together is very important. We do make progress when we think together, when we talk together, and when we work together. And so, I was thinking about this society that we live in and thinking about the principles that you just enumerated. We don't really live in a society that promotes or teaches or tries to instill these very principles in our day-to-day life. And so we've sort of moved away from the idea that it takes a village. I remember very well that if I acted up someplace in my neighborhood, the word got to my parents before I even got home. Somebody was coming out of their door to confront my mischief, to say, we are a village. We are all family. What you are doing is unacceptable and it needs to stop. And so when I, cut up, which I sometimes did, it got to my family. I remember one time I got home and there were officials talking to my father because I got thirsty and thought I could have a soda off the soda truck. And it got to my family before I got home, and there they were. And my father made me go to the company and apologize in person, face to face. So even at this old age, it's a lesson I have never forgotten.
That's right.
I've never forgotten. And so I think that we have a responsibility to rejoin our youth in teaching principles, teaching behavior, teaching the code of conduct that will help our community and respect each of us within community as the human beings that we are. The tragedy that I see, especially among some of our youth, is that there seems to be a disconnect between their lives, their community, and essentially their family. And so when you look at the brazen behavior of taking someone else's vehicle, that's brazen behavior which does not take community into regard. It's brazen behavior which diminishes the humanity of the person that you are stealing from. It does not take into account the fact that the individual who has the car needs the car in order for their family to have transport to job, healthcare, service, faith. It dismisses all of that. And so that operating on the individual, self-serving kind of format is the behavior and the thinking that I would hope our community would begin to challenge. And I'm going to say this. Tough statement, but I'm going to say it.
Mhm.
If you know that yours have done wrong, you need to do the right thing,
Hmm.
which is acknowledge that yours have done wrong. It could be a brother, it could be a sister, it could be a cousin, a nephew, a niece, but we need to heal. And the only way that I know to heal is to have folks admit, come forward and say, this is wrong. This is not in the principles of our community. This is not in the principles of our humanity. You need to acknowledge and change. Um, that is the way that we get back on track. The, unfortunately, there will always be evil out here in the world.
Mhm.
The question is whether we step up to confront the evil and then give a more supportive, guiding view and behavior and code, which helps our adults and youth to build a stronger self and community. I'll pass the stick to my brother, Mr. McFarlane.
Thank you, Brother Ted. Well, let me complicate this conversation.
Okay.
Okay, so, what if, and how do we deal with actions of people who've created a narrative in their own mind and spirit that what they do is in fact a part of, quote unquote, the resistance. And so there's another mentality operating, because if you're operating as almost as a stranger in your own land, as an unwanted and unwelcome, if you know that your survival and your instinct and your will to survive means certain kinds of behaviors that you either adopt or that you want to break free of, or remove as requirements for your having a space in the world, and either publicly or privately, you do things that offer a resistance. Some of these things are things that are hostile or hurtful to other human beings, but you figure out a way to rationalize that. How does that work, number one? And how does it work inside a context where the structure, the social structure, is configured in a way to deliver pain to you as a matter of the official order of the day? And that pain could be, Bobby and I were talking just a few minutes ago. We, again, like last week, we talked about a great conversation last week. Brother Harvey Linder and you and Dr. B and I, that was just phenomenal, awesome. We need to do that again. I'll keep it going. And this is that. But we were talking about how when she watched the Emmett Till story, the crux of the story is that this young boy from Chicago wasn't fully trained, didn't fully understand, didn't fully know, didn't adopt the way of knowing that kept Black people alive in Mississippi. And so therefore he felt comfortable whistling at a woman, or he felt comfortable looking at that human being in the eye, when the practice, the social structure, required that he never look a white person in the eye, and certainly not a white woman. And so let's describe that as not an aberration or unusual, but that is a signature, a hallmark. It's one of the countless rules that reinforce this notion of supremacy and of dominance and of privilege. And it's an imposition on this young individual, but on all of us. And all of us have organized the way to resist that by complying and then maybe doing other things that subvert or chip away at it. So I'm just speaking here. So my wife said, I remember that. I remember having to walk on Saturdays in Crystal Springs, Mississippi, where she grew up as a child. On Saturday afternoons, me and my friends would dress up and walk downtown. Nowhere to go, nothing to do, not even shopping. We didn't have money to shop, but we could walk around and see each other and laugh and talk. And that was just a joyful, way to spend afternoon for teens and preteens. But we always knew that if a white person was walking down the street towards us, without even thinking about it, we knew to step aside and lower our heads, to not look at them in the eye, to sort of stand down, take low. And then when they walked by, we would continue as if it hadn't happened. She said that she remembered being in a store. She was 8 years old, general store in Crystal Springs, and by mistake and quite accidentally, she bumped into a white child. She remembers the trauma and fear she felt because even at 8 years old, she knew that she could die. She could be killed for touching another 8-year-old by accident. And so that, when she watched the story of Emmett Till, brought that feeling up, that memory, and that memory informs her right now. She said, that's why when we're driving here, we're both 75, 74 years old, but when we drive now, we tense up. When we see police cars coming, because that's a memory that we have. She said that she remembered walking home one time from maybe it was a afternoon football or sports activity, and she told two stories. One is walking home by herself. She said, which you generally don't do.
That's right.
It was daytime, and a white guy in a car drives up and starts driving slowly, the speed of her walking. She's a kid. She's 12 years old. She's walking home from the town center, and this car pulls up, and white guy in a light car and a light shirt. And she said, when I watched the Emmett Till story and I saw all these white men in the jury, these are actors, in the movie, but they were enacting the parts they played. White men in the jury, white shirts, and light colored pants and those white hats. Well, the guy in the car that followed me was a white man in a white shirt and a hat just like theirs. And I knew then my life was in danger. And so what do you do with that? So what if then you personally, if not you, those around you or those that follow you, sick and tired of being sick and tired, find ways to resist, and the resistance includes things that make other people uncomfortable, and so that's the fine line. And I think that what you're talking about, Ted, is finding an instruction that allows us to resist, because resistance is important, but resistance and staying alive is important. And is there a strategy for resisting and overcoming that doesn't make us like those who oppress us, that doesn't seek to destroy them individually or to condemn them individually, but as Mahmoud al-Qadi would say, to condemn the deed, not the person. So the deeds that they refuse to take ownership of, refuse to acknowledge, to admit, are deeds that we condemn, and that is where we resist. But those deeds exist in their actions, and they have to own it. So I don't know, I'm just sort of going on here. With that, I want you all to respond. The question is resistance. How does resistance play? And so I was talking to a sister of mine. I was talking to my mom actually a couple of days ago, and my sister was in the room, and we were just talking about the challenges and just kind of the crazy environment that we're in right now. And she went into young people, and this is a conversation that just took off on its own, no plan, no script, but she went into these young people ain't taking it no more. And I hadn't heard this before said like this, but it stuck with me. They're even liberating other people's automobiles. Whoa, whoa. So you talked about the carjacking, the inconveniencing, the endangering of other people. And that led me to the question that I start this long soliloquy with, and that is, how do we create both an awareness, an approach that doesn't put us in a position where we do things or justify things that really are not justifiable. I don't think you can justify carjacking. I don't think you can justify robbing. I don't think you can justify killing other people. Then again, I read about, and I may have mentioned this before, when Fidel Castro and his soldiers went into the Sierra Maestre Mountains in Cuba and Oriente, they prosecuted their revolution by attacking and destroying the land and buildings of plantation owners. I mean, think about Nat Turner, right? And so they went on a campaign of here's a big farm owner, plantation owner, lots of people working almost serfs, not slaves, but almost. Let's burn it down. And they said when he went to, he and Che arrived into the place where he came from, they said, well, comrade, that's your father's farm. What do we do? He said, burn it. Burn it. We burnt the rest, burn that one too. What does that mean for us? Will this notion of resistance that I heard an inkling of in my sister's comment grow to a point where people see their challenge to the order and to the injustice as one where they've rationalized and created a strategy of armed response, and when they say, oh, that's Al McFarlane's house, what should I do? Burn it. I'm just throwing it out there. What do you think? I'll pass the talking stick back to you, Brother Ted and Dr. Draveda. I'm putting a lot on the table, so I don't know.
Wow. Dr. V, you want words? I have a couple of words in response. Do you?
Please, you start. You start. I'm so many things are going through my head. I gotta process for a second.
But that's the way Brother Al McFarlane operates. You understand? He has so much information, so much wisdom, and he's a thinking person. So I appreciate the question, and I'm going to go to a word: disenfranchisement. Big word. Basically, to me, it means rejection from the society, being expelled from the normal developmental icons or status or symbols that make you a member in good standing in the society. Disenfranchisement, the pushing away, the rejecting of a person or a people from the norms of the society. This is a trauma. And it is a trauma which then calls, in my thinking, it calls into view the way the universe is unified in the sense that power tends to balance, what we call homeostasis. There's a balancing of energy and power in the universe and in the society. So I say all of that to say this, that when you push against, there is a resistance that's coming back at you. It's a balancing of the force. If you push that 40-pound ball in one direction, then its momentum is going to reverse and come back at you. And so it really doesn't take into account what it might destroy as it responds to being pushed. Now I think about people. People have been pushed. The balance of power is off. The humanity of people has been dismissed, disregarded, subjugated. Dominance tends to subjugate, push down. And so when you feel pushed down, you tend to try to balance the power. And sometimes the balancing of the power, that resistance to that subjugation, does not take into account the society's rules for behavior or normality, because you have already been pushed outside of the norms of the society. So the question becomes, why should I respect the rules and regulations of the society when the society does not even respect my humanity? I've been pushed aside. I have been stepped upon. I have been kicked. I've been marred. I've been changed. Why should I respect the rules of society? And so the behavior begins, and the behavior is such that I now am operating in a survival mode, which means I am going to do for self whatever needs to be done in order to survive. The difficult part for me is that then I also overthrow the humanity and the boundaries toward my fellow person. So if I'm without a car, or if I'm in need of stimulation, excitement, I no longer see you as a person, as a brother, as a sister. I simply see your car. And I act in a self-serving way because I'm looking for excitement. I might be 24, I might be 14, I might be 16. We have examples of all of these in our cities right now. But I'm self-serving. I am self-serving, and that essentially places the cart before the horse. Old phrase, but essentially it says that the reactivity is now boundless. It has reversed the energy direction. So now instead of the horse pulling the cart is in front of the horse. And you are no longer bound by the civil rules of behavior. You are in resistance. And the rationalization is society does not respect me. I have no respect for the rules of society. I intend to survive. And the difficulty with that is in the establishment of the self-esteem, which simply says if I get away with it once, it allows me information which then increases the probability that I will try to get away with it again. Because now I'm redefining myself. I am building my self-image. I am building my ego, which is substantiated on the fact that I can do outside of the norms of society, successfully get away with it, and now dare anyone to compete with my skill, my achievement, because I am all that and a bag of chips.
But does that describe the oppressor?
Oh, you ask a difficult question. And I would say the oppressor feels like they are all that and a bag of chips. The oppressor feels that their rules are the dominant rules and must be followed by others. The oppressor feels that they have the power, which they demonstrate, to place into power those who agree with, support, and continue their line of thinking. And the answer is yes. I believe that those who are in power think they are all that and a bag of chips and have the luxury of dismissing anyone, everyone who disagrees with their particular rubric for
So,
behavior.
Yep.
so Dr. B, is there an African way of knowing
There
that
is an
can
African. Go ahead.
that can create ways to live, ways to know that let us see what it is for what it is, but keeps us focused on who we are and what we choose to become without imitating that which oppresses us. What do you think?
Well, I think that there is, and that is hard to come by if we don't have elders around who sit up and share their wisdom and hold their role. And because as Brother Ted was talking, I've been writing a book called When I Say Race, People Run. Because our community doesn't like to talk about race because that's the shame, that's the blemish. No, it's more than a blemish. It's a hot boil on the body of America. The way they have treated people of African descent and build a country on land they didn't own and people that they took control of. So I believe that for us to be well, when we get well, when we're in that process together, what really happens for us is that we begin to show umoja, unity. Our wellness is in our unity. That's why there's so many African proverbs around unity. You know, it takes a village to raise a child. When spiders unite, they can tie up a lion. Many hands make light work. So the core basis of our survival is not to be separatist, but to be unified. And we have that, but it's distorted by colonialism and all those things that you described earlier that your wife experienced. And coming from Texas, I used to be afraid of little white kids because I knew they would say, "Look, mommy, there's a nigger." And I didn't know quite what I would do with that. You know, I was afraid of them. And I heard Reverend Al Sharpton talk about when he came here that he had the same experience, that he saw a little white girl about to say something and she went, "No justice, no peace." And that was not what he expected to come out of her mouth. So that kind of thing gives me hope. But the reality of the healing process is our unity, our circles, our healing circles. And it doesn't require a psychologist or a specialist to be able to help heal.
I think Brother Ted's trying to get back in. He might have lost the link. And AZ, if you're there monitoring, please bring Brother Ted back in. He called me on the phone just a second ago. I didn't answer it.
Good.
But I think he's trying to get back in the call. So AZ, if you are there and are monitoring, try to get him back on. But excuse me, Dr. B, go ahead.
Oh, no problem. We don't want our brother left off. I wonder what happened to him. So I was holding it down till he showed up. But so that's what the truth is about us. And how the question is this. You know, we have this program, this premeditated parenting boot camp called Project Marua, with Marua meaning Swahili for respect. But the whole core of the program, this boot camp for parents, who are fighting the battle to save their children's lives, the whole core of that is that they first have to learn to model, and then they have to teach. So for those parents who participate, and for many of us who try to raise kids, we all often find ourselves having to check ourselves because our children are watching us. They're watching when we do well. They watch when we do wrong. They watch when we make decisions. They watch how we handle pain and loss and grief and regret, and how we make ways. If it's going to be legal or illegal, they watch us. So the biggest challenge to Umoja is to have leadership in our homes, our communities, people we can watch. And my challenge to our Black brothers and sisters who are mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers, uncles and aunts, is to model and teach the right way, the well way, so we don't have to go through repeating our history, which looks like that's what we're trying to do right now in America, trying to go back instead of forward.
I want to apologize to Brother Ted. I got a text saying he's trying to get back in. Oh, here he is. Okay, great.
Good.
Yeah.
So, Brother Ted, I was just saying, the last thing I was saying is that we heal through unity.
Yes.
And by having models and teachers. Yep.
Yes, I could hear you, but sorry, the link broke. But I certainly agree that we need to teach. We need to be able to develop, teach, demonstrate a platform that is the type of behavior, the type of society that we want our society to be. And I really do not believe that we, what shall I say? I don't believe that we take that from the majority society. I believe we take it from our spiritual understandings, from our cultural roots, from those behaviors which have seen us through for century after century after century.
For millennia, I think, excuse me, but it brings me back to remembering what Dr. Linder said last week about the principles of Ma'at and the opposite of Ma'at. So, we're at the end of today's program, but I want to maybe next week or the following come back to that. And that's where I was headed in raising the question, Dr. B, about whether there's an African way of knowing. And is there a system of viewing creation and existence that explains us to us and explains us to the world and explains the world to us in ways that center on the truth of our existence? And I would say the truth of our existence is something about divinity. And it's not a divinity that we claim exclusively, but a divinity we recognize in everything that exists, not only the living, but the inanimate, not only the sentient, but the non-sentient. And so there must be in our origin story that we have been discouraged from knowing. It's been hidden from us, but I think we are discovering now. I think we always lived with retentions of it in our DNA. We simply didn't have the text. But now that the texts are becoming available, and that the people who are professional knowledge developers in our community are with a scientific zeal searching both the text and the feelings and the study of brain and spirit and the connection of all of that. I think we are about at a moment of a new dispensation, and that dispensation is the way to resolve, Brother Ted, this obligation to resist, but to discover the highest form of resistance. And it's not the destruction of anybody or anything. It's the completion of everybody in everything. And
Yes.
those
The
who
lifting up.
seek to destroy us are simply incomplete.
Yes.
And our mission has to be to move them towards completion, fulfillment. And we only do that by discovering fulfillment in us.
Yes.
That's right.
Once we become ourselves, our true selves, that power that goes back is the power that transforms. We are the alchemist, the chemist,
Love
the
that.
chemistry, the change agents, and the change that comes out of our organic existence is a change that gives life. That's what I think. So
Yes.
And
anyway,
I'm sticking with that.
all right, I'm sticking with that.
That's
Thank you.
that's your story. I'm buying into it. I'll stick with
I
it
love
too.
it. Thank you. Listen, I so appreciate and value these conversations. And you all listen. I said last week, I'm your patient, and I'm glad to be here. And thank you so much for this conversation. And to our listeners, join us this time next week for the Healing Circle. You know, we want to grow this conversation. And if you are a health professional, practitioner, health educator, a mom, a dad, you know, and want to bring your voice and thoughts and questions to this conversation, we invite you, reach out to me directly. I'll give you my easiest email address, and we'll figure out how to get you on this show with us. You can reach out to me at Al, my first name, Al, at insightnews.com. Al at insightnews.com. And if you don't hear me responding to you immediately, just hit me up again and I will try to respond. We want to hear you and be with you, be in company, be connected to you. We think the connection is what matters. I call this connection the remembering, putting the body back together again. I'm Al McFarlane. I'll see you next time. Dr. B, thank you.